Hello and welcome everyone. Thanks so much for joining us today for this webinar hosted by Foundant Technologies. My name is Lindsay Laughlin and I am one of Foundant's solutions engineers. And today we are excited to be demonstrating some key functionality of our integrated products for community foundations. I'm joined on the webinar by my colleague Rosie Sprengers, who is also a solutions engineer. And together we'll be walking you through our product CommunitySuite, and we will be stopping from time to time to answer questions from all of you. So before we begin, you'll notice we're using Zoom as our technology platform. I think a lot of us are accustomed to using Zoom for everything these days now, but just so you know, we will be utilizing that Q&A icon today. That's where we're going to be asking you to type your questions as they come to you. We will not be using the raise your hand or chat features today, so please utilize that Q&A icon throughout our session. We're also providing live closed captioning on today's webinar. Please note that these are automatic captions and may not capture our words with 100% accuracy. So if you prefer, you may hide them by clicking on that closed caption icon and selecting hide subtitle. Let's take a look at what you'll hear in today's webinar. First, I'll give a very quick introduction to Foundant Technologies so that you have a better understanding of Foundant as a company. We are really passionate about not just being a software vendor, but actually being a really meaningful partner to our clients. So I think it's important that you understand who we are and a little bit what we're about. Then the bulk of today's presentation will be that product demonstration. Rosie and I will take turns leading you through key functionality within CommunitySuite, starting with the online donation side of things, and then moving into some of the CRM functionality and the donor portal. After that, we'll move kind of end to end on the grant processing side, as well as a good look at our robust reporting tools. And we will wrap up our time together today with a session around the fund accounting functionality. Like I said, we will stop many times throughout the session to answer questions, but please don't feel like you have to wait for those question breaks. Since there are two of us here today, as one person is presenting, the other will be monitoring that Q&A section and typing answers as needed. When we do pause for Q&A breaks, we'll tackle anything that needs a demonstration or maybe a little bit deeper conversation. We also want to recognize that each of you have carved out 2 hours of your day today. We're grateful for that. We do commit to making it through all of those topics there within the 2 hours. However, both Rosie and I have a little bit of flexibility this afternoon. So if anyone needs to stay on for additional Q&A time, we're certainly happy to do so afterwards. So a little background on Foundant Technologies. We are headquartered in Bozeman, Montana, where approximately maybe 70 or 75% of our staff is today. We also have remote employees now in 25 states across the US. Rosie and I both fall into that remote category. She is in Wisconsin and I'm in Oklahoma. We have grown so much in our 15-year history. Foundant began in 2006, and today we have over 2,000 Grant Lifecycle Manager, or GLM, clients, which is the product we're probably best known for. That's our competitive grant application solution. Grant Hub is a product for grant seekers to manage their grant proposal process, and we launched that product just a few years ago and already have over 800 using that solution. Finally, at the bottom, what we're all here for today, we have that CommunitySuite product, which is a fund accounting and CRM solution for community foundations. We have 373 clients using CommunitySuite today. And with that client growth, our team is certainly growing too. Foundant is up to 200 team members, which is so shocking to me. One of my favorite things about Foundant is the company culture that we've grown and maintained over the years. We work really hard, but we also have a lot of fun too. And if you haven't checked out the About Us page on our website, it's worth a quick look. Not only can you see the 200 staff members' faces there, but you'll also get to meet all of our office dogs. All that to say, we have a very happy staff and extremely low turnover. And I think that's really just a testament to how we've maintained such a positive company culture full of happy employees who aren't leaving, even in the midst of a lot of growth. And with that growth, as I said, our team is growing too. We are quickly adding staff to the team that really have a deep understanding and often direct experience with the community foundation space. The people listed on this slide are just some of the team members whose primary role at Foundant is focused on the community foundation sector. And as you'll see in the bottom left-hand corner there, many of these faces, actually including Rosie and I both, had direct experience working for community foundations in the past. In fact, Rosie meets both of those qualifications listed there. She is a CPA, and before joining the team at Foundant, she spent many years as the controller for the Community Foundation for the Fox Valley region, and prior to that did both accounting and audit work. And then I'm kind of on the far other side of the foundation spectrum. Before joining Foundant, I was a grants and scholarship manager at 2 different community foundations. Most recently, I came from the Dallas Foundation. And I also spent about 10 of those years as a Foundant client, actually utilizing the grants and scholarship solutions. In fact, when I first became a Foundant client back in 2007, I think Foundant had 5 staff members and about 15 clients. So from my perspective, it's been really fun to watch the company grow and to now get to be part of the team. Hopefully, as you can see, Foundant is very intentional when hiring to pair the technology that we have with insights and expertise from the sector. I think that's the combination that really helps our clients achieve success. To get ahead of some of the common questions we receive on this webinar, here's a quick breakdown of some of the clients that we have using CommunitySuite. As you can see, we have sizes all the way from very small startup organizations with just a couple of funds up to clients with over $1 billion in assets and thousands of funds. That's one of the great things about the CommunitySuite product is it's really built to scale and grow with an organization. We've brought clients over from all different kinds of systems, so we feel really good about that migration process. In fact, I came from a background using a product called FIMS, and my colleague Rosie was using Blackbaud Suite, so REFEGE. We like to think that we're bilingual and can help you translate between the different systems. I also want to call out our renewal rate there at the top of the screen. This number is pretty unheard of in this sector. Hopefully it speaks for itself that clients are able to have successful migrations and they're so pleased with the product and with our team that they continue to renew with us year after year. Just a reminder today that we will be focusing on CommunitySuite. So everything that you see here in blue, depending on what kind of systems you currently use, CommunitySuite is an all-in-one system. So it could be replacing a number of products that you use now. I know in my past, we used FIMS for fund accounting. We used a separate product for CRM, an unrelated donor portal from a different company, something else for online donations, and we were even managing some things in Excel spreadsheets. So the frustration there, as many of you can probably relate, is that the products don't talk to each other. We were dealing with duplicate entry and it felt impossible to kind of keep everything up to date. So as you'll see today, CommunitySuite eliminates that frustration. It is one product. So everything you see in blue here is one piece of software. A little bit later in our time, we'll take a quick 2 minutes to see how our separate products, the GLM and SLM for grants and scholarships, to see how those are integrated into CommunitySuite. So if there's anybody on the line today that already uses those products, I think it's really important to see how easily we can sync data from the competitive grant solution into CommunitySuite for payment. My last visual here before we get started, as I mentioned, CommunitySuite is one system, not multiple different pieces or modules talking to one another. It's truly one cloud-based system. And within that system, we like to think of 3 different lenses that we can use to view the same database. We'll look at the administrative view where you and your staff will be logged in, doing all of your daily work, all of the accounting functionality, the CRM and donor development functionality, processing grants and donations, running reports, all of that will happen in that internal view. A little bit later, we'll also take you through the Fund Advisor portal, or commonly called the donor portal, where you can give a fund holder access to log in and view real-time information about their fund. Again, just a different lens those fund holders are using to see the same database. And all that means is the fund balance that they see in the portal is exactly what you see in the administrative side. That data will never get out of sync. And the third view there at the bottom is what we call the community view. This is the more public-facing view. It's the piece that connects with your foundation's website and can handle online credit card donations. There's a really great crowdfunding tool, online event registration. Again, just another lens we're using to see the same database. And we're going to show you all three different views today, but that community view is where Rosie's going to kick us off. I know that public-facing side can be really important, not only for how it presents outside the walls of your foundation, but also the ways that the automation behind the scenes can really help streamline your internal workflows. So hopefully that helps you get to know Foundant as a company a little bit. Before I hand things off to Rosie to get us started, I do want to set some quick expectations. This will be a very high-level overview of CommunitySuite. I know 2 hours sounds like a lot of time, but there is so much information to share. We will probably be moving fast and covering things at a high level. That means that a very common next step, if you are interested, is to schedule what we call deep dive demos. That's more of that one-on-one format where someone from our team can get on the phone with your team, get to know you, get to know your specific organization needs, and then talk in depth about all things finance, perhaps, or all things scholarships. So we love doing those deep dive demos and interacting a little bit more. That's a great next step if you're interested after today. One last plug to please submit your questions as they come to you. In fact, I will go ahead and answer what is typically the first question we get, and that is yes, this webinar is being recorded, and you will receive a copy of that recording via email. With that, I'm going to stop sharing my screen and hand it over to Rosie to get us started.
Great, thank you, Lindsay. Hello, everyone. We're happy to be here with you today. As Lindsay said, I'm actually going to start out the product demonstration in kind of an external facing view of the product. And we're starting with what we would refer to as the community portal, or this online donations area that will be embedded in your website. And it also is just a piece of the software program that is CommunitySuite. So today, throughout the demonstration, we're working in my fictitious foundation called the ByteRight Foundation. You can see that this landing page in our online donations area is actually skinned to match what would be the website for the ByteRight Foundation, just like your site would be skinned to match your website. So this header area would try to flow the exact same way that your normal website flows. And then in the online donation space, we have a couple different things that we are able to build out. So let's look at what we have here running across the top of the screen in tabs. First, we are on the Donate to a Fund tab, and this is where we have the option to promote certain funds that we may want to collect donations online for. We can also make sure that funds would stay private and never show up here. We have an additional layer where we would be able to say show all funds or search for a very specific fund if it's not found in this list. And this list, again, populates based on what you've decided to promote. That means that if you have a photo attached, you could have that attached here as well, and a little description can be inserted underneath the fund name so that you can give people an idea of what the fund's purpose is. Additionally, CommunitySuite has a grant catalog in the program, and this is an area that we are able to build out. Typically, this is the crowdsourced funding area. It is a way to have nonprofits apply for grant money that then you would be able to advertise to the community through your website. So I currently have 2 grant catalogs open. If I jump into my school year grants, I can see that there are 3 different grants that are still open out here. And these are really program specific or very need specific areas in the community. So with this, we can see we're raising money for eyeglasses for students in the area. Someone would be able to come in here, contribute to this total requested amount. And then we have the option of whether or not we want that total requested and the total funded to show up on each individual grant request. The next tab is going to be for event tickets. If you host live events or in-person events, you would be able to collect either an RSVP through this area, or you can post your different ticket types to a physical event and take credit card payment for those event tickets. So we have a great scholarship bake-off open right now that is coming up, and we will be purchasing event tickets as we check out. The last tab that we have out here as an option to populate would be this nonprofit directory. And this could just be a way to advertise the different relationships you have with agencies in your community, certain agencies that you want to advertise right now or permanently. You could actually update this page either in an alphabetical listing or a categorical listing, and that can help your community members really get familiar with the organizations that you partner with and the organizations in your community. So we saw this tabbed approach to building out the online donations page. We see some clients will definitely stick with this tabbed approach. We have one that I like to show, which is North Carolina. And because each fund that you can donate to and each grant that you can donate to, every event that you can buy tickets for, those all have their own unique URLs. We do see clients will build their own web page, kind of their own format for all of these different giving opportunities, and then embed those URLs into something like a drop-down list in this case. Once I have clicked into giving to this certain fund, this is where you can see I have a unique URL, and I've actually switched over to a CommunitySuite page. So we do see a lot of flexibility in the branding and just the look and feel of accepting online donations. So with that being said, we will just build a cart right now, and we will be a new donor in the community and just kind of searching the website. This is typically behind a Give Now button on your website where we just have these different opportunities out here. So let's build a cart, and we can give to this fund for kids. Enter a one-time donation of $250. With any online donation, we could make that a recurring donation that will just charge our credit card on a certain interval. And we also have the option to attach tribute information to any of these gift lines that we're giving. So I will add that $250 to my cart, and then I'm going to check out the grant catalog. And let's look at the second catalog that's published out here. And potentially we want to give for this opportunity. Saving Paws needs cages for their chickens. Let's go ahead and donate here. Let's give $300 to this cause and add that to our cart. And lastly, let's register for this great scholarship bake-off event that the Community Foundation is hosting. Here we have different ticket prices and types. We also have one sponsorship that's advertised. You can decide whether or not these sponsorship types or any of these ticket types are actually published to this online page. And something else is that this page, along with any of these funds or the grant catalog, they can actually take on their own branding. So you could brand this page to be the event branding and colors if you wanted to. So we are going to register just a general admission ticket for the scholarship bake-off. We could add an additional donation if we wanted to. Right now, we'll just add that to our cart and then do the checkout process. So here, this online donor can see the 3 different pieces that they are giving to, and then they can fill out some basic required information in order for us to actually accept that donation and eventually acknowledge it. So right here, we could have this donation remain anonymous if we wanted to. but CommunitySuite is just going to look for some basic information as this person is checking out. So we are going to be a fake person named Boone Lake. I am going to use my actual email address at Foundant. And from here, we will have a fake phone number. We could enter a recognition name if we wanted something to be published separately from what we are entering as our first and last name. And then we also can allow our donors the option to cover credit card fees if we want to put that out on our website. So Boone Lake is our fictitious donor, and he is going to check out right now. He can choose to pay with his credit card, and CommunitySuite is integrated with Stripe as a credit card processor. I know some fake credit card numbers that Stripe accepts, so I'm going to enter that information here and then enter Boone's information. His name and his address can come here. So from here, he's entered his basic information. He can then process that credit card gift. Something I'd like to mention right now is that CommunitySuite has a live site and a sandbox site, which means you have a sandbox version of all of this data where you could be testing out transactions, including these Stripe transactions. So you would also have access to that same exact fake Stripe credit card number, and you could be checking out as though you were a fictitious donor and seeing how it lands in your sandbox site. So from here, Boone did register for the scholarship bake-off. So we are going to add him as a guest to that ticket just so that we know the information. And attached to any of my tickets for my event, I have a request out here. So I need to know if he wants a savory or a sweet ticket at the bake-off. We could do something like t-shirt sizes or meal choices if you wanted to attach those to your tickets. And from there, we will save the ticket information and mark that as done. So Boone is our online donor. He has entered all of the donation information that he wants to give. He's charged that amount to his credit card. He gets to a thank you screen. And at this point, we could have automatically sent him an acknowledgement letter if we wanted to have that be a feature for our online donors. We will see later in this demo that I actually have it entered into a queue so that I can process it internally, but just know that we have the option to auto send those acknowledgement letters for the folks checking out online. And with that, I am actually going to stop this experience as our online donor and hand it back over to Lindsay so she can give you a tour of what the internal view of CommunitySuite is going to look like.
It would help if I could find my mute button. Thanks, Rosie. There is a couple of questions that have come in if you'll take a look at that, Rosie. We'll keep moving though, and we'll pause for some live Q&A here in a few more minutes. So Rosie was acting as our online donor. I am now acting as the Community Foundation staff member. So again, the screen that you're seeing here now is our internal or administrative view. This is where all of your staff will come to do their regular day-to-day work. You'll see some menu options across the top, as well as here in our middle section. And as I move from page to page within the system, you'll notice my left-hand side menu is what's changing. These kind of become our action items when I'm in the funds area or when I'm in the profiles area. So just a little quick navigation for you there. Something else I wanted to point out is we love having our support functionality right here in the product. So at any time when I'm working in my system, I could pop open this question mark and get in touch directly in 3 different ways. Personally, when I was a client, I loved the chat with us feature. Really during business hours, I think it's 7 a.m. to 6 p.m. Mountain Time, Monday through Friday. You can chat in real time with a real person on the other side of that chat. who can help kind of direct you of what you're trying to do and help you with whatever questions you have. So that live support is right here in product, really, really handy. We also have a lot of other support if you're more of that self-help kind of person. Maybe you need a reminder of how to do something. You can search our knowledge base here and it will actually tell you what to click and walk you through the different steps. The last thing I'll mention before we kind of continue with the demo is this second icon here at the bottom. This is more of our Foundant support. This is actually courses that you can take. So instead of that one-off question you have, this is going to be more like, I want to learn everything about the CRM and profiles system. These are all the different courses we can take, and there's even a quiz at the end to test your knowledge. So lots of great learning and development tools built right into the system. All right, so let's go into our donations page. Rosie just had our new donor named Boone submit a few donations online for us. So clicking into our donations page, the very first thing I can see is, again, in real time, those donations came in from Boone. In fact, he did not have a profile in our system before this very moment. So if I click one layer deeper, you can see that CommunitySuite automatically created a profile for him, utilizing the information that Rosie entered on his behalf. So again, really great kind of time saver that you're not having to key in that information. No duplicate entry, CommunitySuite does that for you. The other thing I'd like to point out here is on his donor record, CommunitySuite has already kind of filed all of the appropriate things to his donor record. There isn't any staff time needed to connect those dots. All I mean by that is in his profile, if I click into his donor layer here, this is going to be all of that information that just came through. So we saw him RSVP and purchase a ticket to that event that we're hosting. We also saw the 3 donations that came in. So all of that data is already on his profile here, tied up nicely. All right, when I click into that donor history, again, that's going to build out over time. So of course, this is showing just those 3 donations that came in, but as we get to know him a little and he donates to other things, all of this information will build out. We'll be able to see a nice chart of a summary of all of his donations over time, as well as a list of every single individual donation. Talking about this campaign really quickly, he did register for this event. I'm not going to spend a ton of time here just because we are limited on time, but we do have a really great campaign functionality in CommunitySuite. Campaigns is the word we use for really anytime we're addressing people in mass. So that could be sending out a newsletter to a lot of people, sending out a copy of your annual report. Maybe it is some kind of membership opportunity. You're having a giving circle or something like that. In the example we're looking at today, though, Rosie has created this scholarship bake-off. So the other option here is to use this for your events. These could be ticketed, like we just saw him purchase a ticket to attend the event. They could also be maybe just free things that we're hosting, but we need to take registration because we only have, a limited number of chairs in the room. So any kind of event that you're doing, you can certainly set up as a campaign. Again, I won't go kind of a deep dive here, but just a high level look, you can set up a campaign in a lot of different ways. Rosie's example here, she has set up different ticket levels. So in that case, we saw Boone purchase a general admission ticket. All of this data got updated automatically in the system for us when he purchased that ticket. So again, I did not have to come in here and find him. I didn't have to add him to this list. I didn't have to mark him as RSVP'd. All of that happens behind the scenes for us. On the other hand, if you do have somebody call and they would rather pick up the phone, Mr. Goldman here, he's not going to go online and register. He calls to let you know he's attending. You certainly have the ability to do it manually. We just encourage the time savings of letting the online side of things really automate that for you. All right, the other thing I like to point out just really quickly is we could invite somebody one at a time here if we had somebody we wanted to add to this event, or we could curate a profile, a filtered list of profiles and add something like everybody who is a donor between the years 2019 and 2020. So we can get really, really specific and add lists of people. We'll talk a little bit more about list building a little bit later. All right, let's go back to our profile talk. In fact, I'm going to jump back into Boone's profile here. So again, CommunitySuite created this automatically for him. And I'm sure the next question is, what if he was an existing donor? He's donated before, he's already in our database. How do we make sure that there isn't a duplicate? So CommunitySuite is always looking to match an exact name, email address, or phone number. And if it doesn't find that exact match, it will err on the side of caution and create a new profile. What that can mean, if I can use Rosie as my example here, maybe in my system, I have her as Rose Sprangers, that's her legal name. But when she goes online to donate, she enters her nickname Rosie, everyone calls her Rosie. The system is not going to assume that Rosie and Rose are the same person, so it will create a new profile for her. That being said, we have a great tool in here to manage when that does happen. From our profile section, we have a piece here called duplicates, and this is looking through the system of any potential duplicates. We have a lot here since this is just kind of a fictitious site, and Rosie uses her own information here a lot. But just to give you an example, if I click into King Arthur, the system is telling me that I have 2 different profiles with the exact same name. And I have a couple different options here. If I want to think about merging it before I commit to making that change in our data, I have the ability to see the first profile in my first column, comparing it to a potential duplicate in my second column. In this case, it looks like our first profile is just a little bit more filled out. And the results column is showing us what is that singular profile going to be if I do commit to merging these. So again, it's just going to keep all of the information. You can say the advisor was listed on this one, the vendor was listed on this one. It's going to keep all of that information, and I could process that merge. So it's a good thing to keep an eye on that duplicate system. Really depending on the volume you see, especially in those online donations. Some of our clients come in here once a quarter and clean things up. Others might come in every Friday afternoon, to keep things nice and clean. So potential duplicates might happen, but if there is an exact match, CommunitySuite will automatically match those profiles together. We're going to go back to Boone's profile. Something that I like to point out here is this global search bar. This is great because if you are wanting to jump into a record, but you're not exactly sure, is it a profile record? Is it a grant record? Was it a donation record? That global search is actually going to look across the entire system for whatever you're typing. So you don't have to start in profiles and then search, or start in funds and then search. You can use that global search. It also works with numerals. So if you're looking for a voucher number or something like that, you can certainly type in numbers as well. All right, so let's look at his profile quickly. Again, everything that you see here came in automatically from what Rosie entered in the online donation. And really, it's kind of minimal contact information we have, but over time, we're gonna get to know him more, and we can add more things to his profile. I'm gonna click into the edit screen. There are lots of fields here, so let's just kind of start entering a few of them. Maybe as a salutation, I want to call him Mr. Lake. We are going to process a tax receipt for him in just a moment, and I want it to say, "Dear Mr. Lake." Maybe on the outside of his envelope, I'm going to just call him Boone Lake. Over time, we learn his birthday, and we want to remember to send him a nice card in the mail, let him know the foundation's thinking of him. Lots of different things we can do. Something like a steward is going to say, "Of my foundation staff, who is responsible to really cultivate this donor, be that kind of key contact person for Mr. Lake." I'm going to say Carrie is going to be that for him. And as you can see, lots of other information I can set here. Excuse me. Maybe after a little bit of time, I know that he has more than one address. Maybe in the winter, he spends some time in Florida, perhaps. So let's add another address here. And this is some functionality that I really, really enjoy. I can mark this as I can include a date on here, and all that means is maybe I know starting November 1st of every year, it's best to reach him at his address in Florida. And then starting maybe April 1st, it's best to reach him in Tennessee. So adding those dates, all that does is it takes the task of trying to remember where he is during what parts of the year off of my plate. It doesn't have to live in my brain. The system will automatically change the primary address given those dates. And then when we do run tax receipts, depending on what time of year it is, it will automatically know which address to pull. So scrolling down, you'll notice a lot of other fields we have. I'll call your attention to these two boxes at the bottom. These are just some other tags we can use, and both of these data fields are what we call user-defined menus. So you get to decide what your options are on each of these. In fact, we have a handful. We have quite a few user-defined fields in the system that you get to decide. Rosie's instance here, she has that first level of NTEE codes built out as her grant type interest. So maybe we know that he really is interested in education grants. Maybe let's pick another one, maybe also youth development. So those are really kind of his passions. We'll see that functionality work here in just a quick second. The other side, profile types, again, that's just kind of a tag that you want to add on his profile. Anything that you want to keep track of, like over time, he becomes a VIP donor. We want him to be invited to all of our VIP kind of high touch donor events. Utilizing the tags like this, I'm able to really quickly pull a list. If I want all my VIP donors to be invited to something, I can pull that functionality really quickly. I'm going to save those changes we made. And as we scroll down, you'll see, of course, our new tags are here on the side. Some of those new pieces we put in, our new winter address is also in here as well. So very, very easy to edit and update these. Again, as we are kind of moving forward in our relationship with this donor, maybe we get to know if he has a spouse or a family, maybe we start interacting with other people in his household. I'm not going to run all the way down this path, but I do think it's important to know that in our profile section, we have individuals, but we also have the opportunity to create household records. And all that means is we want to address Boone Lake and his spouse together. We want to invite them to events together. We want to send them one copy of our annual report with both of their names on it. We could create a household record in that instance and use that there. If I want to interact with Boone individually, maybe I know that he is interested in potentially opening up a fund with us that he personally is going to fund, not the whole family. Then I would interact with his individual profile. But the nice thing about the household records is even the individual activity will roll up into the household. Since I'm not going to run down that path with Boone Lake, I will show you one that's already built out just so you can get an idea of this. This is Jimmy Dean and Paula Dean make up the Dean household here. And as you can see, we're in a household record right now with all of their contact information. But underneath that household umbrella, we have individual profiles for both Jimmy and Paula again. So when it's time to address Jimmy individually, I could utilize that profile. In fact, if I click into Paula Dean, just to give you a visual, I can see individual things like her relationships. She is on the finance committee at this Community Leadership Partners Giving Circle. She personally is an employee of Johnson Financial Group. These are all things that are specific to her. If I were to go into Jimmy Dean, I would see different relationships, right, that he has. So some of them might be the same. We could have his wife on here. Looks like we have best friends. We can also see who he volunteers for in the community. Again, things that are specific to him individually. This could also include those profile types, right? He is a Legacy Circle member. Maybe she's not. So we're able to handle those things separately. But back out on this household profile, when I come into our designation here, this is going to be any additional layers of data for our profiles. In this case, this household is a donor. They're also fund advisors and they're customers. So if I jump into that donor layer, again, this is going to show us a roll up of all of the activity, regardless of if they've donated together a time or two, if they've donated separately a handful of times. I'm going to be able to see really that 360-degree view of their interaction with our foundation as a whole. So down here below, I'm able to see lots of different pledges. Some came from Jimmy, some came from Paula. They've been invited to a lot of different events or on certain mailing lists together. And then down below, I'm going to be able to see all of their donation history. So again, this particular gift was a gift to the donor advised fund that came in together. Maybe Jimmy on his own is supporting the Sarah Lee Scholarship, etc. So easy to see kind of how the 360-degree view of all of that activity when you're utilizing kind of that household umbrella. We haven't talked about opportunities just yet, but I would like to. Let's jump in here really quickly. Opportunities is another place in CommunitySuite where we are able to track or really customize it to fit exactly what your needs are, depending on what we're trying to work through. In fact, if I open up my opportunities screen here, this is all 100% customizable. Rosie's examples she has built out are things that we commonly see in our clients' sites. So what are some typical asks that you want to track with your donor development or with your community involvement? Maybe I want to approach somebody for a gift solicitation, a major gift. Maybe we're hoping that somebody opens a brand new fund with us. In fact, since our new donor, Boone Lake, just submitted that donation and maybe over time we cultivate him, let's try and solicit him for that new fund to open a fund with us. We'll do that in just a moment. But as you can see, each of these opportunities also has a number of stages. You get to decide if you have one stage or a dozen or more, completely customizable. But the idea here is that moves management piece. First, we're going to identify, I think that we should connect with Boone and ask about the potential of him opening a fund with us. After we have that initial conversation, we're going to start engaging and cultivating that. Over time, as you can see, we're going to solicit, we're going to create a new fund agreement, and then the long-term relationship is really stewarding that fund and that relationship. So an example here that's already built out, again, I'm jumping back to Paula Dean. She has two different opportunities. Maybe we are documenting a bequest here, so we can keep all of that in the system. We also are recruiting her to become a professional advisor with us. So Rosie has just started that. She's kind of interested, but lots more we can do here. In fact, let's go ahead and start this for Boone. I'm going to jump into Boone's profile. And over on the left-hand menu, I'm going to create an opportunity. So we are going to go with that new fund solicitation. I could assign this out if Carrie was that main person to stay in that relationship with him. This is going to be one of my team members. I'm going to ask Carrie to keep up with this. And I'm asking her maybe to get this going. Hopefully he opens a new fund before the end of the year. These fields are voluntary or not required. So if we know we're asking for a certain amount, we could put that in here. If I know that it's a certain fund that he's going to be donating to, I could put that in here. I'm not really sure at this point, so we're just going to leave those blank, but I am going to create our first task for Carrie. Again, she could do this for herself. We could attach this to our own person or to somebody else. So I'm going to say, let's have a phone call, and I'm going to say kind of initial conversation about that new fund. And maybe we can actually get this going before the end of July. So what we're going to see, again, just so you can see the continuity from Boone's profile, down below we have this new opportunity we just created. And when I click into that, I'm able to see that we are in that early stage. We're just identifying if this is a possibility. And over on the side, we can see that Carrie is going to make a phone call, have that initial conversation before the end of the month. In fact, when she does, she could come in here, say, I actually took care of that today. And these are my notes that I learned while I was on the phone with him. As we mark that task as complete, we can also add the next task. Now that we've had that phone call, let's go to lunch with him. Let's learn about his passion and what can we help him with. So as you can see, this can really start to pile one thing after another and become a really great tool for development staff to really be able to track their interactions with their donors or really anybody in the community. You'll notice my tasks bar up at the top it has a red box around this. This is because we have some kind of task assigned to us that is overdue. In fact, we have quite a few. We are logged in as Foundant Technologies, and we use this site a lot for demonstrations. But this is really a good place for especially very busy development teams, or if you are the only development person on the team, a really great place to start your day or start your week to look at all of your upcoming tasks. Make sure you call so-and-so, send out that thank you note to so-and-so, invite somebody to lunch, et cetera, et cetera. So great tool to use there as well. So before we stop for our Q&A break, I am going to just, again, fast forward our relationship a little bit more and say maybe over time, we've talked with Boone. He's excited about opening a fund. In fact, he wants to open a scholarship fund. So maybe we meet for lunch and he hands us a check to create that fund. So what I'm going to do is then enter that donation that he just handed me. I'm going to create this manually since it didn't come in online. I'm just going to put in his name here, and this is now our donation record. A few different things I can do here. I'm going to give it a donation type. Again, this is a user-defined menu, so you get to decide what your options are here. Maybe this is a $50,000 check to get his fund up and going. I could track that check number. And I believe Rosie has already set us up with a new scholarship fund, just so you didn't have to watch the creation of that. We'll jump into that in a little bit so you can see a fund record. But for the sake of time, we have already gotten that up and created. And this is just our initial donation to start the fund. I could create a custom message here. This is a field that can be pulled into our tax receipts when we run here in just a moment. Again, the tax receipt template would pull in these pertinent pieces. So thank you for your $50,000 for the Boone Lake Scholarship Fund. The custom message could be something like, really enjoyed lunch with you last week, looking forward to working together, or something that you want to add in there that is a little bit more personalized. We are going to say that this needs a tax receipt. We'll run that in just a moment. We also have really great tribute functionality in CommunitySuite. So if a prominent member of the community passes away or is giving a gift in honor of somebody, we're able to track those tributes and really streamline some of the administrative work there as well. I am going to process this donation. If I come back, well, first in our workflow screens, we do have some red text. That's CommunitySuite prompting us that there are a few things that we have not done yet. We have not sent a tax receipt, and this is not posted to the GL yet. Depending on your division of duties in your foundation, this might be a great spot of handoff. So maybe it's my job to get all of our donations in there, and then somebody else would come in to this unposted list, review them, check everything out, and then they could post all in batch. So again, depending on how your workflow happens, we can certainly handle volume like that if we need to. In fact, while I'm thinking about it, this donation that just came in for his scholarship fund, I'm going to link it back to that opportunity. So we had just created that opportunity that we are soliciting a new fund from him. I'm able to link this. Again, probably my favorite thing about CommunitySuite is that the fund accounting system and the CRM system are the same system. So I'm able to link a donation, financial money that came in the door. I can link it directly to that CRM moves management piece to tie it out, to say that, yes, this has happened now. No duplicate entry, no records getting out of sync there. So that is all linked up now. And maybe, as we go back, we might need to be processing these tax receipts. So at any time, I could be in one individual donation and I could process a tax receipt right here. Otherwise, probably more common for our clients, we're processing in batch. We have lots of tax receipts for things that came in this week. So from my donation list, I can just hit this tax receipts button on the left-hand side, and this is going to queue up every donation we've received and posted that a receipt has not been processed for. So you can see we have quite a few from today that we need to bulk process. And I will go ahead and do that right now. You'll notice it's rolling up some of these together. This scholarship one was the check that he handed us. This $300 is what Rosie did online. So we'll take a look at that here in a second. I could print these donation receipts. That's going to give me a PDF here in a moment. I also have the option to download them to Word if I would rather. I could also print envelopes or labels, or if I would rather email these tax receipts, I can do that right out of the system here. Since I chose a PDF, I'm going to get my file here and we'll pop this open so you can take a quick look. I'm going to jump down to the ones that we did today. Here is Boone Lake. So this is the first one that Rosie submitted online. It spells out the 3 different things that he did online, the different donations and the scholarship event ticket. Since part of that ticket is going to probably pay for the catering, the event, it's that non-tax deductible portion, it does separate that out here on his receipt. And as I scroll down, we'll see the second one for his check donation listed here as well. The last thing we need to do here is mark these as sent. And as I do that, a couple of things happen. The first important thing is if I go back to bulk create tax receipts, there's nothing in my queue, so it's taken those out. The other thing is if I jump into one of these donation records and scroll down, I'm able to see when that tax receipt was processed and who on staff did it. So again, we're logged in as Foundant Technologies, but this would have your staff member's name listed right there. All right, that's the biggest section that we cover. I know that was long. Rosie, let's take our first Q&A break before we move forward. Any questions coming in?
There is just one that I wanted to answer live, or at least mention live, and it just is the question about if spouses have one profile or are there 2, one for each individual. And so we see that each individual can have their own profile. We track everything on those individual profiles, and then we can link them as a household if we want that spousal relationship also tracked in CommunitySuite. So I thought maybe that was worth just calling out again. And I don't see any other questions in the queue. So if there are any other questions waiting, we would be able to answer those. Otherwise, I can grab this screen and we are able to move into the donor portal experience.
Sounds good.
All right, so I will share my screen. And let's do a little bit of admin work before we jump into what our fund advisors will see online. So Lindsay didn't show a creation of a fund. We're actually going to look at Green Giant has a donor advised fund in my site, and it's been around for a little while. So we'll have some transactions and fun things to look at as we look at this fund record. A couple things. This is the fund internally. So we can see as employees that up-to-date fund balance as donations go in and grants go out. This is the live fund balance of everything that's posted to the general ledger in real time. And then we are able to code our funds with 4 different types of codes that are all user defined. I have one of mine to say that it's a donor advised fund. That's the legal type of fund. That Green Bay affiliate is maybe not a separate legal organization, but it's a family of funds in my site. And I also have a category for my legal organization. So if you do have supporting orgs, you're able to track those here on the coding and division. We can have a fund be anonymous, and that just means that any grant going out of the fund will be marked as anonymous automatically. I have some additional reporting capabilities here, so I could mark this again as donor advised and very quickly pull a list of all of my donor advised funds. We can attach fund steward. So Kelly is the person within my organization who is the steward for this fund's relationship with the community foundation. And if I jump into this section here, we can see that it is an endowed fund. I want to track a spendable balance. And that just means that CommunitySuite will open up these fields to say, donations coming in go into the principal balance. I also have a spendable balance. I can click into either one of these balances and see the transactions that have gotten me to the current balance. So we can see this fund has gotten some spendable allocated to it. We also can see that grants have been going out of the fund, so that will come out of the spendable balance. We can mark donations to actually flow into the spendable balance. So we can say, put a donation right to the spendable balance for immediate granting. We can have those kind of pass-through gifts coming in. Also on our fund record, we're going to define how much this fund gets as the spendable. So if you are calculating that in your site, you'll be able to say this one gets 4%. We can have as many different calculations as we want and then just assign to the correct fund records. On the fund, I will also designate if I want to set up a budget for this fund. So specifically for operating funds, we'll probably turn that budget feature on, fill out our budget in CommunitySuite and be able to report budget to actual. I definitely want to give my fund holders fund statements, especially my donor advised fund holders. So I am going to turn on fund statements for this fund and say that they should get my standard fund statement format. This is another template in CommunitySuite that can be changed, tweaked for different audiences. So this is a fund that receives my standard fund statement. My agency funds might receive an agency fund statement format. We also can add our admin fees here. So we set up our admin fee calculations and we just assign them to the funds as needed. And we can have something like a contribution admin fee. Anytime a contribution comes in, take a dollar amount or take a percentage. We could also have something like a donor advised fee that would be more of those monthly calculations on the average daily balance or whatever that might look like for your organization. We can have as many different fee types attached and calculations as we need. Scrolling down a little bit further, we're going to see that the assets are up to date. So this is where they currently reside in this fund. I can click into these asset balances and get the general ledger detail if I want to. I can also set a fund summary. This is that public display if you want to advertise exactly how the fund is set up, the purpose of the fund, or any details. You would be able to set that in the fund summary. And I have another box down here for fund statements. So as I run batches of fund statements and publish them, they are going to publish right to this fund record in CommunitySuite. I can also attach files to this fund. Because I'm attaching a file to a fund record, I have the option of whether or not I want to share that with anyone logging in to see this fund information. So I have shared the fund agreement. I had a grant progress report that I uploaded and I haven't shared that yet out to the portal, but I have the option to do so if I want to. Then a little bit from this left side menu that's going to build out based on where we're at in the system, you can see that I would be able to pull a balance sheet or an income statement if I wanted to do one of those two canned reports from my left menu. I could also run a donation report. So let's look at all of the donations coming in 2021. And I have a detailed list of those donations, who's been giving those. We can jump into the actual donation or the donor by using these live links. We're also going to have grant reports that will look very similar. We can pull a donor report for this fund, and that's going to give us statistics of the folks who do give to this fund. How much have they given in total? What was the maximum gift to this fund? And what was their most recent gift to this fund? We also will have a grid for all the years that they've been giving to this fund with those totals. So it's very nice to look at some of these statistics for your fund holders and be able to share that detail with them. So at this point, we can see this fund record internally. There are other pieces of functionality and other charts and reports that we have available on our left side menu. But I want to show the fund advisor look to this same fund. So something that we can build out on our profiles is the permission layer for our fund advisors that gives them access to different funds. So Green Giant is a fund advisor in my site. And here you can see that he has access to not only his donor advised fund, but also a designated fund and one of my community foundation granting funds. So he's going to be able to see all three of those when he logs in. And then he has a couple of families of funds that he manages. So he's the treasurer at Feeding America. I have a supporting org that is the Hike Right Foundation. And giving him access to this affiliate supporting org area is just a place where we can add funds together, especially in those families of funds or those supporting organizations where they are a complete separate entity. We can give him access to all of those funds added together on the donor portal or on the fund advisor portal. Something else from this layer, our staff members at the Community Foundation are going to be able to log in as Green Giant. So if he is calling and he's stuck and he doesn't know exactly how to navigate in the portal, you can follow along with him by logging in as Green Giant. The Fund Advisor page is where folks need the username and password in order to see their data. So we can see that he has access to 3 different funds. He has 2 different groups. And then something else that I didn't mention on this screen, but should have, is that we can limit or give permissions to these different funds based on fund and fund advisor. So you can see here, his designated fund would not allow him to make a grant request online, but his donor advised fund will allow him to make a grant request online. So let's look as he logs in, we can see that he has access to these funds. Let's jump into his donor advised fund. And when we do that, we have some statistics and some numbers up at the top. We can see the current balance. Again, this is in real time. We also can see the spendable amount that he has available to make grants out of. We can see total contributions and total grants in and out of the fund. And then looking down, he has some dashboard graphs here to let us know contributions that have come in, top 10 contributors to this fund. We are able to drill down into any of these data points and get a detailed list of the contributions to make up this 822 or this 324. And then off to the right-hand side, we have a line graph by year. So I'm looking at 2021 contributions by month. Again, I could drill down into these data points if I want to. I can toggle to any year that the fund had history. So this fund started in 2020. That's why my contributions also start in 2020. But if I had 20 years worth of data, we could allow our fund advisors access to all 20 years worth of graphs if we wanted. Same types of charts we'll build out for our grantees. We can see the top 10 grantees. We can drill down into those data pieces. And we are going to have that line chart by year and by month. We'll be able to get those data points. Something, if this fund was a scholarship fund, we would have these graphs repeating for all of the different scholarship recipients as well. So let's just jump through some of these tabs that Green Giant has access to. Here we can see the list of contributions. And starting from here, Green Giant might want to filter by a certain contributor to his fund, a certain date range. He does have filtering and sorting capabilities out here. So he has some details of the contributions that have come in. If he has any pledges out here to this fund, we can see that we would be able to turn this tab on for him. So he has a pledge, has a balance of $1,500. If he clicks into that $1,500, he can see exactly how the pledge started, the payments that have been applied, and then how much is remaining as open. Jumping into the grant screen at the top, I have this grantee summary, which is quite nice to just show that I've given, or Green Giant has given 11 grants to Feeding America of Eastern Wisconsin, totaling $72,000. I could jump into this, get that filtered list of grants just to Feeding America. I also can jump down to the bottom area of the screen where I have the same filtering and sorting capabilities that we saw in the contributions area. I am going to save grant request for last. Grant catalog, we saw this when we were looking at online donations. I have the same grant catalogs published to my online fund holders that I can just access through the website as a community member. However, we would be able to separate those out. If we wanted to publish a grant catalog just to our fund advisors, we could do that with separate permissions on the grant catalogs. Fund statements, the same fund statements that show up internally on the fund are also going to live here on the fund record for our fund advisors when they're logged in. They will automatically be shown online. We can also be sending them paper copies or emailed copies, but this is something, if they have access to their statements tab, they're going to be able to see any statements that we've published for this fund. As far as files go, this is where we see that there was a fund agreement that we shared with Green Giant specific to his donor advised fund. We can also share documents in bulk. So if I did a fund fee update, I probably mailed that out to all of my fund advisors, but I wanted to publish it online as well, so I can bulk publish files to their portal. Our fund advisors could start a donation online. They can save their credit card information out here if they want to. They also have receipts out here. So any acknowledgement letter for the gifts that they've been giving, they will have access to those receipts out online. That means that if this one is in the mail, or if it was in the mail and it got lost, or it got lost after it was delivered, Green Giant is still going to be able to access that acknowledgement letter online, especially when tax time comes. That can be very helpful for our fund advisors. And then coming soon, we're going to give our fund advisors access to a balance sheet, an income statement, some investment performance, where they'll actually be able to see what they've been paying in investment manager fees, what they've been earning in interest. So that is coming soon to the donor portal. And again, any of these tabs could be turned on or off for our fund advisors by fund. So with that being said, let's go to the grant request tab and finish out our experience online from this tab. So our fund advisors, we can allow them access to submit a grant request. And this is the page that they will see. They can see their recent grants over to the right. If we look at grantees that they've given to in the past, they have a drop-down menu. So Green Giant could just very simply pull Feeding America from this list if he wanted to, just grant to Feeding America. He could also set up a transfer grant. So from his donor advised fund, if he wants to give to our operating fund, he could do a transfer grant and effect that right from the portal. He also can look at all of our promoted funds in this drop-down list. So we could promote certain funds here and have them show up as options for our fund advisors to give to from their donor advised funds. Some other functionality, especially for, well, we can do a search for grantees. So I could say, I want to look up Make-A-Wish. And from here, I'm going to get grantee search results for Make-A-Wish. First, I'm looking at the results right from my community foundation. So I already have a relationship established with all of these Make-A-Wish foundations. We can see that there are a couple in there already. I can also, for US clients, have GuideStar results show up here. So GuideStar results will integrate with GuideStar. That means that all of their profile information is out here according to what is published in GuideStar, and Green Giant could come here and create a new request to any of these organizations if he wanted to. So we are going to head back into the Bite Right Foundation results, and let's give to the Make-A-Wish Foundation of Minnesota, create a grant request. Here, our fund advisor can enter a description. So if he wants to give to general operations, that's what he's been giving for recently. he would be able to do that, and maybe he gives $10,000 to this organization. He could make this one grant anonymous. He could also make it a recurring grant and tell us how often he wants to grant for general operations to Make-A-Wish of Minnesota. If he has any attachment, he would be able to scan that and upload it to this grant request. He can then tell us what is in the attachment, or he could just send us special instructions. So those would flow through to the employees at the Community Foundation. From here, Green Giant could come and say review. He likes the look of this. He wants to submit that grant request. And now when he's looking at his grant request tab, we can see that there's a new grant out here with a status of request. The amount is $10,000. Because we've not processed it as staff, he still has the ability to cancel this grant. And then something that is often asked is, how do you find out that your donor advisors have, your donor advised fund holders have actually submitted a grant request? You do have the option to get an email alerting you that there's a new request waiting for you. So with that, let's stop for questions that might be out in the queue. Lindsay, are there any out there?
We had a couple come in, but I fielded them as you were talking. So we currently don't have anything that we need to go over together.
Okay, great. Then I will stop sharing my screen and send it back to you for more granting.
Wonderful. Let me get this up here. So let's talk about grants. Like I said, this is really kind of the piece that I get excited about. That was my past at the Dallas Foundation and in Oklahoma City both. So Rosie acted as our donor who came online and submitted that grant request. We're going to talk about all different kinds of requests in this section though. The first thing I'm going to do is jump in here to our grants page, and you'll notice our grant buckets across the top. The first 4 or 5 buckets are really how do different grants come into the system. So we'll walk through each of these in a moment, but requests is where that donor advised request landed. Again, that happened in real time. We didn't have to do anything to pull that information in. The moment she submitted that on behalf of Green Giant from his donor portal, it landed right here for our staff to start working on. I'll come back to this in a moment and move this forward. Rosie also talked at the top of the hour of our time together about the grant catalog. This is where those grant requests would live. We will also look in just a moment at that GLM or Grant Lifecycle Manager integration. That is the online competitive side of things. As soon as you have grants ready to sync over, they can appear right here. Again, no import export of data. It is a sync button that pushes data over here and then syncs records across systems. We also give you an import tool. So if you find yourself with a spreadsheet of grants that you don't want to manually key in one at a time, you can download an easy template and then upload those grants into the system in mass. Right now, it looks like Rosie has her grant catalog grants already running, but they're not quite funded yet. So they're living in that unfunded area here. And then last, I'll kind of pause here, is our new bucket. And this is going to be for any grant that we just need to manually key in. Maybe it didn't come online through the portal, or it wasn't a competitive grant. It's just something I need to key in. Or potentially it's a donor that doesn't want to use the donor portal. They just called you or emailed you and asked about a potential grant that you need to key in. So that's where we start here. And then the remaining buckets that we have across the top are really kind of our workflow buckets. So from request all the way through new, this is how did the grant come into the system? And then at some point, every grant will need to go through an approval process. There's a couple different options there that you can set up, how many different approvals you need. Then at some point, every grant needs a voucher to be attached to it. I think of a voucher as kind of a check request. Again, Rosie is our accountant here. I'm definitely not. So we'll let her handle the check cutting here in a few minutes. But eventually, as she cuts checks, those grants will move into the paid bucket. Finally, we have the complete bucket. Our clients use this in a number of different ways. It's really just one additional step if you want to have a timestamp on something specific. And the two examples I always think of is some clients have, checks get cut on Monday, and it might be Tuesday or Wednesday before they're actually signed, depending on who your check signers are. And if they're in the office, it could be Thursday before those checks go out the door. Maybe they move them to complete when the checks go out the door. So you have that timestamp on when they left the office. The other example I hear, which I think is great, due diligence, but it's also maybe a little bit more work, waiting until you're doing your bank reconcile. And as soon as those checks clear the bank, then you move them over to complete. So a couple different options you can do there. We are going to walk through 3 different examples here, and let's start with that donor advised grant that just came in. So I'm going to open this up, and all I can see is the grant request that Green Giant submitted. And again, our red text is going to prompt us on kind of what we need to do next. I'm going to create this grant record. And even though I've created a record now, a couple of things I like to point out. I still have all kinds of edit capabilities. So if I notice that Green Giant has a typo in this description does get pulled onto our grant letter. So maybe I want to clean that up for him. No matter what changes I make on the grant record, down below, this online grant request will always stay exactly the way that he submitted. So you do have that kind of audit trail here to see exactly how he submitted it. You can make your edits up at the top. The other thing I like to point out here, like Rosie said, for our US clients, we do have that integration with GuideStar. For our friends in Canada, we also have an integration with Aja. So as you're doing that due diligence step, it looks very similar here for our Canadian clients as well, just verifying that status of the charity and then giving a timestamp of exactly when we did that kind of due diligence. Again, if I wanted to see the details for this specific GuideStar results, all of this data came in from GuideStar. It would look similar if you're a Canadian client utilizing that Aja integration there. And then all of those, every time you pull that due diligence, it's going to be saved on the grantee's profile. So auditors will always be able to see that you're doing that due diligence. Down below, I'm going to also see on the left-hand menu that my red text is now saying that this has not been posted to the GL and it's not gotten that approval stage yet. Again, depending on your workflow and your staff duties, potentially this is a handoff opportunity. So one person who works with the donors saw that it came into the request tab, created that grant request, did the due diligence, and now it's sitting in our new bucket waiting for that next step. Maybe somebody else comes in here and is going to post them all in batch. The next piece that I'd like to show off is if you do need to key in a grant, maybe it's not part of those outside competitive cycles or a donor that doesn't want to use the portal, at any time you can come in here and manually create a grant record. The first question it asks you is if this is an external grantee or if it's an internal grant, or some people use the word interfund grant. So my family donor advised fund is supporting the foundation's disaster relief fund. So we can certainly handle those fund to fund grants in the system. It just happens a little bit differently. So I'll go ahead and choose our Saving Paws Animal Rescue here. Again, we see this grant form very similar to that donation form that we filled out. And I'm just going to put in a couple of things here. This is for the summer rescues. I can even code it as having been animal related. Again, that's a user defined drop down, so you can really get creative how you use that. And maybe this is a $500 donation. And this is coming from our unrestricted granting fund. Again, this is going to look similar now. We are in the exact same place as we were a few moments ago with the donor advised grant. I have my grant record ready. I need to do my GuideStar or Aja check. And now that that's complete, it's telling me that I need to post and get approval. Again, I'm only seeing that option there because my permissions, I'm logged in as Foundant Technologies. I have full administrative permissions. Again, depending on division of duties, you might kind of lock that down and only let a few people do the post step or the approval step. Next, we are going to jump into the GLM side of things just for about 60 seconds. A quick reminder that GLM, Grant Lifecycle Manager, is that piece that is the online competitive application cycle. And I've jumped into Rosie's site here. Again, this is not a GLM demo, but for anybody on the line that uses GLM, after you make those grant decisions and all of your competitive grants that you're going to approve are sitting in the approval stage, let's just jump into one of these for North Texas Food Bank. This should all look familiar to you GLM clients, but due to the integration, you would now have this additional C-Suite tab here. And all I have to do is click Sync Request, jump back over into my CommunitySuite grants page, and that GLM record for the North Texas Food Bank grant is now here. So you can certainly do them one at a time. Of course, with most grant making, we're approving slates of grantees. So you could certainly grab as many as you need here and then send in batch using this batch option, send to CommunitySuite. So a couple of different ways to do it. And then once you come in here, the system is going to ask for a couple of specific things. It wants to make sure we know who the grantee is. Again, if this is an existing profile in CommunitySuite or not, and who is responsible to pay for this grant. So I'm going to go ahead and fill this out. In this case, this is telling me that our GLM data about North Texas Food Bank, this is not currently a profile in CommunitySuite. So we're going to ask it to create a profile for us just with that one click. Again, I'm not having to stop and go create a brand new profile using that duplicate data. It's doing that for me. We have a grantee record here now. I'm also going to set the fund and say our unrestricted fund is also paying for this. And when we create that grant record, again, we are back to the same place we were earlier. We need to do our GuideStar or AJA check for our due diligence purposes here. And we're back to that post and get approval. The last thing that's a little bit different about our GLM grants is we are required to have one additional approval step. The reason for this is maybe this payment date is set to today. Somebody could post it and approve it, and our accountants would be able to cut a check. But since it is a competitive grant, we might have outstanding follow-up forms in GLM that they haven't finished. They haven't signed off on their grant agreement, or they haven't given us that report we needed first. So this is really kind of that stopgap. So we can't move something forward accidentally. One thing I love here is what I call these jump buttons. If I'm in CommunitySuite and I need to jump quickly into the grant program on that specific North Texas Food Bank grant, clicking on that little icon here will take me exactly where I need to go instead of making me navigate everything. And then what I might do is make sure all of their follow-ups are in and then actually approve the installment form here. Again, the example I'm showing you is doing this one at a time. I can do this in payment tracking to do an entire batch and approve installments in batch if I need to. Again, I'm going to do a quick refresh here, and that has now been lifted. We'll be able to actually cut that check. In fact, I'm going to jump back over to grants, and in my new bucket, we'll see all three of the grants we've processed together: our donor advised fund, our grant that we entered just manually, keying it in, and then our GLM grant is here as well. So from my left-hand menu, I am going to go ahead and post all of them to show that batch functionality. And then I'm also going to now be in the approval step. So we are waiting on approval for these. This is, again, maybe a handoff. Somebody else needs to come through here and kind of eyeball what's going on here, spot check, make sure everything looks good, and then we would be able to approve all of them. Again, on each individual grant record, you'll be able to see what staff member was logged in who approved it and a timestamp of when that happened. So for now, I'm going to hit a quick pause and stop sharing. Rosie is going to come back in and pick up as our staff accountant and push those grants through.
Great, so we are logged in. We can see where those grants have landed. Let me do a refresh of my screen. They're now waiting in my voucher area. So anything that we pay out of CommunitySuite needs to have a voucher attached to it. When we look here, we can still batch voucher those grant payments. So I have the 3 that are ready to go that Lindsay has started for us, and I am just going to create vouchers for all of those. And a couple of things happen here. Those grants now have voucher records attached to them. So when I look at this Make-A-Wish Foundation of Minnesota, I have a voucher ID. It's just a separate record in CommunitySuite that eventually will also have the payment history attached to it as we cut checks or pay out electronic payments. So when we attached that voucher, CommunitySuite, we could still get to that grant information. It's waiting in my voucher bucket. The other place that it lives now is in my voucher area, where I can see that I have 3 posted vouchers out here ready for payment. So much like we saw the grant buckets moving from new to approval to posted, and eventually they will be paid, we can see those same buckets running across my voucher area. And this is where we would probably come to start our accounts payable process. So just those invoices that we're getting because we're operating a business, I would be able to say, let's create a new voucher. And if I choose my vendor, we are just going to pay the electric bill. I can always copy a previous voucher record if I want to. Otherwise, I would be able to start a brand new one, enter my voucher date. My operating fund is going to be paying this expense, and I can enter a reference number if there is one, maybe an invoice number that they've sent for me. I can attach that file here. I'll enter my due date as today so that we can watch this getting paid. And then any voucher, we have that option to reduce the spendable balance in a fund if we want to. I will keep this simple and say that we are just paying the electric bill, utilities expense, and enter my dollar amount. I can save that. I can also have vouchers be multi-fund. I would be able to have recurring vouchers in the system if I'm paying the same rent amount every month, whatever that might look like. We can enter those into CommunitySuite. And now, just like Lindsay showed us in the grants area, we are able to first post to the general ledger. That will put that in accounts payable for us, and then we could hand it off for approval. So my approvers for vouchers coming out of this fund are Foundant Technologies. I'm logged in as Foundant, Kelly, or Rosie. That means that Foundant Technologies could come in and also say, I approve this voucher. Then we get that time and date stamp on the approval. Just like we saw the grants, we could do all of these steps in batch. Same thing in vouchers. If we have a stack of invoices, we can enter them, hand them off to someone else for approval, and then be paying them all in bulk. So when I list out my vouchers, I have 4 that are really ready for payment at this point. So if I'm ready to cut a batch of checks, let's do pay. And we will first choose the checking account that we want to pay out of. I am going to choose my Johnson Bank checking, and I will choose today as the payment date. I will select everything that's ready to go and say next. We have some default vendor terms. So We Energies is typically paid via electronic payment. So we're probably sending them an ACH, or they are just pulling that dollar amount out of our bank account. We can toggle between electronic and check. We just have that default show up at first. So I would be able to say this time Saving Paws wants it electronically, and just kind of change it for that one time check or that one time payment. I'm going to leave 3 checks out here and do that one electronic payment so I can create checks. And then I'm actually going to put them all in a batch, so I know which checks I've paid out at this one time. CommunitySuite from here will separate back out our processes if we want it to. So we could say, let's just print grant checks, or let's just print our accounts payable checks. I am going to include all 4 of those in a batch and run into my check run. So this is my area where I'm going to have all sorts of documents relevant to this check batch. First, I can print the checks. So I create a PDF, I put my check stock in the printer, and I will print my checks onto that check stock. This can be a customized template. It might follow a pretty standard template. We can accommodate either one. Next, I would probably print my grant letters, and those are the letters to notify my grantees of who is sending them money and what the purpose is for the money. So I have some grant letters. These are templates again. I can see that Make-A-Wish Foundation of Minnesota Green Giant Donor Advised Fund has given you $10,000. It's designated for general operations. Again, it is a template in CommunitySuite that we start in Microsoft Word, and we just put in whichever merge fields we would like onto the letter. From this same check run area, I could download my grant letters if I'm sending electronic payments, or if I want to, I would be able to notify my grantees of the grants I'm sending them via email. So I can email that directly out of the system instead of printing and mailing if I want to. I have the same options for scholarship letters. If I had any scholarships in this batch, we could print the letters, we could email the scholarship letters, or we could download them to Microsoft Word. And because I'm doing a physical check batch, I'd probably want to print labels or print my envelopes right from the system. And lastly, I would be able to confirm and post checks. And this is where CommunitySuite will ask me, what was the first check number in this batch? It knows my last check number for my last batch. And then it says, I think it printed in this order. We can also see that the electronic check will not have a check number assigned to it. So I can process this. It will post those checks. And from here, within this batch, I would be able to do a positive pay export for my checks that I've printed. I could also download a Nacho file that I can present to my bank to actually affect those electronic payments if I want to. And at this point, everything is marked as paid. My grants have moved into the paid area. So when we look at Make-A-Wish of Minnesota, we can see that that $10,000 grant that we started in the donor portal had that voucher attached. Then it has a check record attached as payment. And we can see that it's actually moved all the way through the system. So with that, we will stop for questions on the granting process or anything else that has come up in the queue.
Yeah, there's just a couple here. There was one about ACH payments, but I think you covered that just in the last few seconds.
Perfect.
There's another one about investment gains and losses, and I know that that's where you're headed next. So let's put a pin in that because that's coming up. The third one, do you want to talk just high level, Rosie? The question is, we do annual and quarterly grants from our designated or organization endowments. Does that go through C-Suite or GLM to C-Suite to process those payments?
That is a great question. We actually have some really great designated capabilities within CommunitySuite. So if I look at Green Giant also has a designated fund, I can attach those beneficiaries right to the fund record and say, these organizations get paid in these percentages. These are the designations for those grants. And then depending on my cadence, I can either batch grant all of my designated grants at one time. I could select which designated grants I want to give out. If this fund likes to give out the annual amount in these percentages, but I do 2 payments each, I could actually create those grants here, go edit the grant payment schedule in each so that I get the payments on the correct kind of intervals of time throughout the year. So we can create we call them spendable grants. We can create those fund by fund. I could start here and say, let's grant out the spendable. And that will just take my spendable balance and make me 4 grants based on the current spendable balance and the correct percentages. So that is for that one individual fund. If I start out in my grants area, I would also be able to create spendable here. And that will do either all funds or specific funds. So this would be a bulk way to do every single fund in your whole system that has those beneficiaries attached as well as a spendable balance to give out.
Awesome. And one more question came in. Can you quickly review how to import grants? Can it be imported from external sources such as Excel? You want to just show off that import template?
Yes. Yeah, so all throughout CommunitySuite, we're going to have import templates. And if I jump into the import grants, you can see that we have a template. So this is a CSV file, Excel looking, and we will give you that template. We also give you kind of row instructions or things to watch out for, format requirements that might be associated with the template. Once it is filled out, you are just going to be able to upload that grants file here and process it and have all of those grants in the system. And this is where I like to reiterate that we do have a sandbox site attached to every live site. So if you wanted to try that upload first in your sandbox area, you could do that and just make sure that everything went according to plan, and then actually upload that same template into your live site.
Awesome. I'm not seeing any other questions at the moment, so we have plenty of time to talk about reporting and fund accounting, and I'll just let you take it away.
Okay. All right, we are going to start out with doing a batch of fund statements in the system. So that is a major pain point for a lot of foundations and something that I really like the way CommunitySuite handles it. So we start out in our funds area and we are able to run a batch of fund statements. Our period in CommunitySuite does have to be closed. So you can see here, my most recent fund statements are from April. I would be able to say, let's create our May statements. CommunitySuite will let me pick if I just want to create fund statements for certain groups of funds, or maybe a certain supporting org or a different entity within my community foundation. I am going to choose all funds. And now I have a new batch of May statements out here. First, we are going to have to review them. I could review them one by one. I might want to just pull a couple up and spot check them. So if we look at that Green Giant Donor Advised Fund statement, this is the May statement, and this is another template that we set up in Word. Probably the most complex template, but we have some really great examples to start from. So you can see I have my May column. I also have a year-to-date column, and I am giving activity, both additions and disbursements, into and out of the fund in kind of these lump sum formats. If we want to, we might build out a section detailing the actual donations that have come in, who gave the donation, what was the date. Same thing with grants. Maybe we want to detail out the grants. You have the options to include or exclude any of the information that you see here. And we have plenty more information that is available to actually populate into these templates. This is just simply an example. So from this statements area, I would be able to say, let's mark them all as reviewed after I've done my review and my checking. And then my last step is to say mark as completed. And that is what we would call the publish functionality. So at this point, all of my internal fund records have a May statement attached. All of my fund advisors would be able to see their May statement online through the donor portal in real time. So let's just show that really quickly. My Green Giant Donor Advised Fund now has this May statement attached. If we log in as Green Giant, and if he heads over to his Donor Advised Fund in that statements tab, we can see that a May statement is out here for him to print right out of the portal. So jumping back into this fund statement, so everything is available online. They might also, our fund advisors might also request an emailed copy or a printed copy. And if they have, we are able to start out in this batch and just say, let's email all for those fund advisors who have additionally requested emailed statements, or let's print the batch of fund statements for all of our fund advisors who have additionally requested a paper statement. So that is our fund statement process. Some other reporting that we have, we looked at the fund record and saw that we could pull a balance sheet or an income statement, donation reports right from the fund. We are going to see similar reports on an all entity wide scale. If we start out in our financials area, I would be able to pull a balance sheet here. And let's look at the balance sheet for today. You can see our default view is going to be every account, every total balance. I can click into any of these amounts to get the general ledger detail behind it. And then we can build these reports in different ways. So we might set up different views. If my board wants to look at this in a more condensed view, we would be able to build that out. We can build as many views as we need. So I have condensed categories of assets here. I also have a drop down over to my right side, and this is where we have some easy reporting based on some of the attributes that we saw on the fund record. So I could say, show me this by fund group. So you could see that I had admin endowment funds, agency funds, designated funds. All of those get their own column. And then off to the right, I'm actually going to have a total column for my entire balance sheet. Right now it is combined with my board view. I might build this out in a different view and say, now show me by my fund groupings. So we get that. We can drill into these amounts if we want to. And then the last piece of functionality up at the top of our balance sheet is going to be to add a filter. So I may say, if it is a donor advised fund, then give me a balance sheet for it. So I can see my donor advised funds. If I just say balance, that will make more sense. So I can just see all of my donor advised funds in this column. I could do something additional, like show me every single fund that's a donor advised fund in a separate column. So we're really able to combine all three of these views, the filters, and then this right-hand drop-down menu to get to some really cool reporting in CommunitySuite. If we have a report that we're sharing with our board and we don't want to change the filters every time or use this drop-down, we can actually just save any of our formats, and then they will live out in this load area where I could just come and pull these reports whenever I needed them. Heading back into my financials area, I have the same thing, same types of functionality for the income statement. One thing that is a little bit different, if I'm looking at second quarter of 2021 in my income statement, I also have a budget for 2021. So I could say, let's build this out according to the budget, or show me my actual versus budget. What is my variance? What are my percent variances? Again, we can combine this with different views. We could filter this down to just be our operating fund. That might make more sense if we're just budgeting on our operations. So you will have all of that additional functionality in the income statement area. And then we have some other financials that we find useful, or that our clients find really useful. First, our audit report. If I pull that for the first half of 2021, I'm looking at every fund, their beginning balance, what have they made as investment income, other categories of revenue, categories of expenses, and then their ending fund balance at 6/30. We can still filter here. We can kind of change the look of those columns or those categories running across the top. If I head back here, we're going to have some other standard reports like a trial balance and a detailed trial balance. Because CommunitySuite can track your spendable balance and the principal balance within a fund, we're also always going to know which funds were underwater and when. That means I could say, let me pull underwater funds as of today. There are 2 of them out here. I could change my date to what was underwater at 12/31. And then I have 2 different funds that were underwater at that time. And the last thing that I would mention in this financials area is going to be this investment report to say, hey, how have my funds been doing? Let's look at how they did in the month of May. And this is what will soon be accessible online for our fund advisors, but this is where we can see exactly how our investment accounts did in the month of May. What did I get in interest? How much did I pay in investment manager fees for each of our different pools?
Rosie, can I interrupt you real quick?
Yeah.
Awesome. We had a question come in about fund statements before we get too far away from that. I
Oh,
thought I'd
sure.
throw it in. So when there's a fund holder that has multiple funds and will be receiving multiple fund statements, can you export the report recipient or by report recipient so that there's less reorganizing before mailing multiple paper statements? Can you talk us through that?
That is actually how that batch will print out. So if I am a fund holder for 6 different funds. All of my funds will print by my name, basically in my order. So you do not have to worry about doing that rearranging. If they print by fund, they're going to print by the fund advisor.
Thank you.
And then for the last couple minutes, I want to jump into our revenue share area, and that is how we allocate out our investment gains and losses that we are receiving from our investments. So I am going to start out in the accounts area. This is our chart of accounts, and you can see I have these different investments living in my site. So if I have received my endowment pool statement, I can click into my endowment pool, and this is going to be step 1 of 2 in getting this information into the site. I am first going to add fees and interest, and then we create what we call a statement voucher. So I could say that I have received a June 30th statement, and CommunitySuite wants us to actually put this to a fund called the Revenue Share Holding Fund. That is really a system fund that will hold those totals before you allocate them out to all of your fund holders invested in your endowment pool. I can enter a reference number, and then I build out whichever lines I keep track of on my general ledger. So I have dividends that I will enter here, and I can enter that amount. I also have some unrealized gains. I can enter an amount there. If I have realized losses that I need to allocate out. So I'm just building this according to those lump sums that I would see on my investment statement. I probably also have investment manager fees that I'm paying. I'll put that as a negative amount as well. And we can save. Next step would be to post that to the general ledger. So in total, my endowment pool made $61,000. I could post that. At this point, that total lives in my revenue share holding fund, which means step 2 is to actually move it out of that fund and into my fund, my donor advised funds, and any fund in my endowment pool. So I'm going to head into the revenue share area. Let's say that we want to create a new share for the month of June because that was the statement I just received. CommunitySuite says it's going to do this share and post it to the individual funds on 6/30. It will calculate an average daily balance that the fund had in my endowment pool from 6/1 to 6/30. So I can say next here, and I now have an unposted batch of transactions showing me exactly how it will split out all of these amounts. It's going to split the 5,600 to these different funds in these dollar amounts, in these percentages. That realized loss will get split. Our unrealized gain will get split out. So all 4 of those amounts that we entered will get split to the different funds. We also have audit details attached here. This is where we're going to see exactly how CommunitySuite calculated the average daily balance. So it gives us the balance on 6/1, 6/2, all the way through 6/30. And we can see the total in the account as well as the total in every fund that was in that endowment pool. Those audit details live on this record, and once I'm comfortable with the calculation, I would be able to post. And that is really just going to move those lump sum totals out of revenue share and into the individual funds. Let's also talk, just to mention, honorable mention, we can calculate your admin fees here and also your distributions of spending policy. So those are 2 additional accounting functionalities that are very specific to community foundations that we like to mention. They are potentially better served in a deep dive demo that Lindsay and I do kind of more one-on-one with organizations. Then we can just make sure that your admin fee calculations, we're talking specifically to you about those calculations, and same with your spending policy distributions. We can talk to you specifically about those. So with that, we're a couple minutes early. I wanted to leave a little time for any additional questions that we might have in the queue or any that are coming up now as we have finished this portion of the demo.
Yeah, we had a couple questions come through, but I typed some answers. Do you want to, and I apologize if I missed it, talk a little bit about custom reporting since we have a moment?
Yeah, we should jump into custom reporting. So we looked at the financials area. We have a custom reporting area, and this one does have some pretty cool reports running on our left side menu that are just already made in the system. But you can see here is that donor report. So we had looked at this donor report that was attached to a fund record. We also have this donor report for all of our funds together. So we can see who is our biggest donor. It's Bryce Canyon. Jimmy Dean is second. We can kind of see their maximum gifts, their most recent gift, first time they gave, last time they gave, and then we see their donations by year. This report, when we started on the fund record, was really just filtered down for that specific fund. So we can look at it by fund or by entity wide. We could look at it just for donor advised funds. So we could add filters to this report. We have plenty of canned reports that do run along this left side menu. This custom reporting area is also where we're going to be able to start out in an area and say, I really am looking at donations and I want to add in the donation amount, the donation date. Let's add in my donor's name and the fund where the donation has gone. So this looks standard querying so far. I would be able to say, I really want my fund name to be the first field here. And then we can also add in some Excel functionality. So I could say, let's sort ascending in my fund name area. Let's also group by my fund name. And to this report within my donation amounts, I really want a total. So I now will have subtotals added. The total amount of donations that have gone into my different funds in my system, those will all be here, as well as a big total at the bottom. Then I would be able to filter this down and say, I'm really looking at donation dates after 12/31 of 2020. So just so far for 2021, it looks like this. People are giving to my Bite Right operating fund. If I go to a different page, we can see that Boone Lake Scholarship Fund has gotten some money in. Brandy Alexander donor advised. So I'm going to have subtotals kind of attached throughout that reporting area. This is a pretty complex part of CommunitySuite. It's very robust. It warrants its own training session, but that is just a sneak peek at some of the functionality that we have in reports.
Great. I'm not seeing any other questions, but I do want to allow space if anybody has questions. Now is your time to type those into the Q&A. As we wait for a couple to come through, perhaps, Rosie, can I steal the screen from you one last time?
Absolutely.
As I mentioned before, Rosie and I have the ability to stay on and do any additional Q&A that we need to. So we'll stick around if any of you all would like to stick around. But for the rest of you that just gave us nearly 2 hours of your day, we just want to say thank you. A Foundant representative will be in touch to answer any additional questions you may have. And please know that we love connecting people. So if you're interested in talking maybe with a client who uses CommunitySuite already, maybe even somebody similar in size to you or in the same geographic region, we are glad to put you in touch with as many different reference customers that would be helpful to you. So like I said, we'll stick around for any more Q&A, but for everyone else, as you log out of this webinar, you'll be directed to a quick survey. Please take just a moment to fill that out and tell us how we did. This is the way that we learn how we can continue to improve and make sure that the information we're giving you is valuable in these webinars. So we love that honest feedback. Please share your thoughts with our team there. Again, we'll stick around for a moment, but for everybody else, on behalf of Rosie and I and all of us here at Foundant Technologies, thank you for joining us today and have a great afternoon. All right, not seeing any other questions.
I think that's a wrap.
All right. Thanks,
Thank
Rosie.
you, everyone.
Bye.
Bye-bye.